Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. So let's talk about these 10 shade crops that no one else is talking about, apparently, according to AI lies. But it might still be some good information, especially for people who either, like us, live in an area that does not get a ton of sunshine, but also you're trying to make the most of your small spaces and you don't have a whole lot of open areas that get all day sun. What are some things that can do well? The first thing I want to say before I get into this list is that I think calling them shade crops, most of these, is a bit of a misnomer because it would make people believe that all these things do best in full shade with no sun. And that's would not be accurate, especially with my own personal experience. But there are several of these I happen to know do quite well with just a little bit of sun and most of the day shade. So the first one, I think most of you would already know this, and this is lettuce. Lettuce really does best if it's not getting exposed to all day very hot sun because it can cause it to bolt, it can cause it to wilt and wither up. It just wants to go right to seed and say, I'm done, I can't take the heat. So here's my seed, bloop, 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 and that's lettuce for you. So it does really do best if it can stay in places it doesn't get all day sun. However, I have found that certain lettuces will take on better color if they can at least get some sunshine. So anything that's a red in color, like a red romaine or any of those red lettuces, if they can get at least a little bit of sun throughout the day, they're going to take on a much more beautiful red color and turn nice, deep burgundy. But without that sun, they might just stay very pale and mostly green with just a little bit of red. So just keep that in mind. If you want in your red lettuce to actually look red, you're still going to want it in a place where it's going to get at least some dappled sun. The second on the list was spinach. I would assume spinach would be the same as the lettuce when it comes to that. It's still going to want a little bit of sun. I haven't been successful growing spinach, but I've only tried a couple of times. I'm like, I don't really care. And it's not that I don't like spinach. I do like spinach. I like it both cooked and raw. But lamb's quarter is kind of a spinachy tasting kind of thing. And I don't even have to try with the lamb's quarter. It grows anywhere it wants to. And I got a lot of it coming up out there. And to me, I actually like the flavor of lamb's quarter. If you struggle with growing spinach, just try lamb's quarters. It loves it anywhere. The next would be parsley, which I haven't been super successful with parsley, and the other one's cilantro. I've done best with cilantro when I grew it in my greenhouse right up under the roof. So it seemed like it liked a lot of sun, but if I grow it out in the open and it gets all day sun, it does the same thing as a lettuce. It just bolts, goes to seed. At least you get the coriander, but I'm really wanting the cilantro leaves for making my salsas because I do like cilantro in my salsa. According to this video, parsley does tend to not like all day sun. So if anyone, by the way, as I'm going through this list, has experience in growing any of these things, either in shade, in sun, or a little bit of both, please throw it into the comments below the video so people can learn from you as well. Because like I said, I haven't had super success with either parsley or cilantro, except for that 1 year with the cilantro. But then we took those shelves out because we felt it was shading too much of the tomato plants below. The other one, and this is another one I can't say from experience because I've never been able to get it to grow, surprisingly, and that is chives. But what I can say is growing green onions, I do notice where I grow them in pots, when I grow them in areas where they get kind of the half and half sun, they do pretty good. And I don't grow onions from seed. I usually what I'm doing is I'm buying bunches of green onions, using them up and planting the little white part. I usually kind of break some of the roots off to sort of stimulate it before I stick them into the soil. And those are a cut and come again, just like the parsley and cilantro and the chives. You can just mow them down as long as you leave a little bit above the soil, and then they'll grow some more, and then you cut them down and you do it again. You do that with all of those. And that's one of the things I love about those is you can just keep getting fresh greens like that throughout the whole season. But for some reason, chives they don't like me. I'm sure there's other people around here that are probably growing them just fine, but they don't like me. So let's move on from there. Another one, which I'd still put in there with the lettuces as far as how it grows, is the Swiss chard. So apparently Swiss chard is a great shade crop. Again, this is not one I can say from experience how well it does in full sun, full shade, or a little bit of both. I've never grown it. I bought Swiss chard before, and I'm like, it's okay. Wasn't super crazy about it, so that's why I've never tried growing it. Number 6 was rhubarb. I think years ago I had read that rhubarb can be a great shade crop, but here that's not the experience I've had. So when I first got a rhubarb plant, I thought, oh, it's supposed to do good in shade. So I planted it on the north side of the house, right up against the house where it never gets any direct sun. And it just didn't do good. I think what happened was that one back there died. It just didn't like not getting any sun at all. And then somebody gave me a cup. They were dividing up the rhubarb, and so they had all this rhubarb. She gave me a couple of, tap roots that I planted out there, and they just go crazy. And so that's full sun. But then again, you have to also remember where we live, we get a lot of rain and we don't get a ton of sun. And even when we are getting a lot of good sun, like it's really sunny today, but it's not a super hot day. It could be our climate. So if you live like in Texas or Florida and you try to grow rhubarb, maybe in those places, but eat. That's all, folks. Maybe in those places, it would do better in the shade as a shade crop. But even then, I wonder if full shade would still be the best thing for it. And like Tyler says, your full sun is our first hour and a half of every day. Let's see. Swiss chard is a good natural mulch. It keeps weeds down and helps water retention for other plants. See, and that's kind of what I see with the comfrey. It starts getting too crazy, which it is too crazy right now. I can just chop it all down and throw it on top of the soil and let it break down, and it helps prevent moisture loss, etc. And then it feeds the soil. I mean, that's another thing that's great about comfrey. I mean, people kind of worry about it taking over their garden, and I get that. But if people remember that it's also, in fact, comfrey was one of the things I added to this list. I mean, it's great for, healing inside and outside. A lot of people think it can only be used externally, but that's not true. You can use the leaves internally, but it's also a great cut and come again. So a chop and drop, and so good for your soil. A lot of people will use their comfrey and make like a tea for their garden. Maybe mix it with chicken manure, or nettle is another one you can do with that. And speaking of, there's another one. Nettle is a great shade crop if you want to deal with it. Even though my nettle is out and gets quite a bit of sun where it's at, I think it stays protected somewhat. But again, as I'm saying, our climate, our full sun isn't going to be as deadly to something like nettle the way other people's are. I know that it does tend to like shade. So if you're growing nettle for medicinal benefits, or even as a vegetable, that's something you can grow in a shady area. But just like the comfrey, it'll spread. But I have found it pretty easy to just dig it up and pull it back. I do that every spring. It does want to spread and starts especially early in the spring. And then I just dig it up, yank it up. I mean, I really thinned it back this year. Number 7, and please let me know if you've ever heard of the Alpine strawberry. I think I've heard of it, but I'm not sure. Apparently, the Alpine strawberry, it's not as big as like the strawberries you get in a store or other types of strawberries you may try to grow. But apparently, according to this video, I didn't look it up. I should have looked it up, but maybe other people can chime in and tell their experience on it because I've never grown that type. I guess it's more of an old school strawberry. I'm wondering if it's more closely related to the wild strawberry. Let's see. Deb says they grow in the mountains of Western New York. I thought wild and alpine strawberries were the same. That's what I was wondering. They could be. Which, by the way, I forgot to say at the beginning, for those of you who are new to my series on watching AI videos, so you don't have to, I'm not trying to support AI. I just want to make this clear. I had somebody get kind of upset with me without understanding what the purpose is because I'm very much against AI and the way it's taking over many jobs, including a lot of us content creators. It's just they're making all this content and stealing our own content to add into their videos. It's just a way for me to kind of fight back. So I take their stupid videos and put them in real human terms because a lot of the information in them is not accurate anyway. So anyway, moving on. Next one, number 8 was peas. And I know when I grew just like your regular garden peas, shelling peas, I grew them out in full sun and they did really well. So again, our hot sun is not the same as other people's hot sun, especially since we don't get as much of it. However, I do know for certain that snow peas do not like full sun. They will too quickly, especially if you don't keep them picked all the time, the seeds want to mature quickly. And if you have too many pods on there that you allow to mature quickly, and this will go with your garden peas too, they will just finish up. They'll say, I'm done. I made my seed. I've procreated. I'm done. So you got to keep them picked for one, but the snow peas will not last all summer if they get too much sun. So where I've got them planted, they get the later afternoon sun where it's not too hot. But all morning they don't get, through up until that time, they're hardly getting any sun at all. And they love it there. I found an area that they really thrive. And also being in a cooler climate anyway, they do tend to do well here. So that is something I know snow peas, and especially if you live in a hotter climate, you would probably want to, and really sunny, you would probably want to grow them if they even do good for you at all in a place that gets full shade. I could see that being a possibility and only getting the light, just reflected off everything else. No direct sun, I think would probably be best for those. Number 9 is lemon balm. This I can attest to. It likes it in both places. I have some lemon balm taken over my West herb garden, which only gets about half the day of sun. But I also have some growing out in the front yard garden, and it will go to seed faster, but it still goes ballistic. So either one, lemon balm, and you know what? That really does apply to most of your mint plants. Rosemary does tend to like a lot of sun and a lot of dry, but a lot of your mint plants, your peppermint, your sage, a lot of them don't mind having a good amount of shade and will still do quite well. So I would say, just try it out if you're never certain. Here's what I do when I'm trying to grow something that I've never grown before. And I start it from seed. I like to have several plants, and then I'll plant them once they get big enough, I will plant them in different places. I'll plant some out where they'll get full sun and less rain, some where they might get less sun and maybe still less rain, and some where they'll get all day sun but more rain. and just see which ones do best. And you'll find every plant's going to be a little bit different in what it's going to like. And that's really for your own climate is the best way to find out what's going to do best. So you can watch this video or these stupid AI videos and go, oh, this is going to work for me. Then plant all your stuff in full shade and find out it's not very happy there. And, or you can say, okay, I'll plant some in full shade and some in full sun and some in half and half, and then see which area they like it best in my climate. That's really the only way to learn. I don't care how skilled, educated, and experienced any other gardener is. If they're not living on your land and doing all that stuff on your property, not everything they say is going to be accurate to you. Number 10 was wood sorrel. Now, okay, I thought this one was a little bit silly. It is correct that wood sorrel loves shade, and I think probably does best in mostly shade, because everywhere I've seen it growing, it's always been in a mostly shady area that gets hardly any sun. However, to call it a crop, I think it's a little bit silly, because I don't know how many people would be growing wood sorrel as a crop, and maybe I'm wrong on that. Now, I like it. I think it's tasty. It's very sour, like most of your sorrels, or maybe all of your sorrels, like sheep sorrel and any of that. Most of them are pretty sour. However, it's one of those that's really high in the oxalates. So all the oxalate fearing people are going to freak out over that. So you don't want to eat too much of it raw, even if you're not sensitive to that, because I know it can cause digestive distress. But honestly, I don't know that many people that would just be chomping down on a ton of that stuff in the first place. But I honestly would not see that. Again, I don't see that as being a crop. And I think they could have come up with some better ideas for this. Maybe it is for some, depending on how they're using it. Like, I know that sheep sorrel is one of those that's used in the Asiatic tea that's supposed to help fight cancer. With that said, now I already mentioned the comfrey, as I think is a good shade crop that's still, it does good either in shade or sun. It just likes both. It's happy wherever. I think it does prefer having at least some sun. But the other two I put in here was dandelions. So I think I mentioned the dandelions earlier when I was talking about the plantain. Dandelion doesn't need full day sun. In fact, when it doesn't get full sun, it gets bigger and big, massive leaves, and it'll grow fast with minimal sun. And I think it still likes to have a little bit of sun, but some of my most beautiful, biggest leaf are those on the west side that only get that more of the setting sun, and they love it. I get those big leaves like that long and that wide. You saw, I think last year, or was it this year? I don't know. You saw me showing some of these leaves that were like this big. And then the last one is potatoes. Now, when we were first trying to make the most of our backyard, we still had a 15-foot above ground swimming pool, a 12-foot trampoline, and I'm trying to make the most of every open space I can out there. This is before we had chickens, so we didn't have, the little chicken yard taking up space either, but, that big pool right in the middle of the yard, it was just like, man, I'm really limited on space, because that pool is where like most of the sun is. That's why we set it up there. So I decided to try growing potatoes. Remember I was talking about earlier about the rhubarb? Well, I tried growing potatoes in that same spot. I think it was before I tried the rhubarb there. And the potatoes did surprisingly well. They do seem to prefer to get some sun. I think they'll produce more, but they also tend to like a lot of water. So you can grow them in full sun, but if they're not getting enough water, you might not get a lot of potatoes. Because of where I was growing them in the full shade, the ground stayed very damp. I didn't have to water them much, and that's because of the drain pipe. So all the rainwater, it would come down in that same area. So it kept it pretty well watered. And I was surprised. See, I was always just trying things. I was surprised to find I had quite a few potatoes like this, and they were yellow potatoes. And yellow potatoes don't always get huge. They tend to kind of stay on the smaller side. Now I had quite a few that were good size. I got a decent little crop of potatoes out of those few plants I had in there. So again, when it comes right down to it, there's a lot of things that may do really well for you in the shade, but you may just have to try it with one plant to see how it does. I wouldn't put don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your potatoes in the shade. Try them in different places, or all your rhubarb or whatever. Just like I said about that rhubarb, it did not like it there. And it didn't help too that the slugs will eat the heck out of them rhubarb leaves, and being in a shady area, it's going to get a lot more, a shady and very damp area, it's going to get a lot more slug action. And I just thought of another one that that does really well over here on this side of the house that only gets the late afternoon sun, and that is my horseradish. I thought of that because the slugs love it there. They hide under the big, huge horseradish leaves during the day and come out at night and then eat the heck out of the leaves. But there's so many leaves that they never run out. And so they still have plenty to keep them cool and damp. But I don't worry about those too much because the horseradish is just great. It does way better in the shady area over here than it does, or in the partial shade. I would say mostly shade, than it does out front. I planted some out front and in the south garden, and that gets full sun. And that rhubarb over there, or not rhubarb, horseradish, is just not doing near as well as the horseradish over here. So there's another one. So that makes a total of 14 instead of just 10. And even though there's a couple on there I wouldn't necessarily agree should be considered shade crops. So let me catch up on a few comments. See, leaves are the biggest in the moist shade. Yeah. My yard is very shady, and potatoes do really well every year, no matter the spot I pick, but we do get lots of rain. Okay. Well, there you go. Young hostas are edible and like shade. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. I tried growing hosta once, but the slugs love that too, and I just gave up because those young shoots are the ones that are supposed to taste like asparagus. But I couldn't get much of them because as soon as they're popping up, the slugs would, and I think they move that fast too. No. There goes my hostas. I appreciate you all. Thank you again for your prayers. And I really do hope you have a blessed day and a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming in. Take care, and God bless.